Everyone. I want to welcome you to today's webinar titled Doing Business in Mexico. And we have a true subject matter expert with us today. Joining us from the Foreign Commercial Service Mexico office, we have Lauren Coughlin, who, I'll be honest, I thought you were going to have a whole lot of gray hair with everything that's going on, but you look like you're doing okay down there. I appreciate you being here with us, Lauren. For those of you that don't know, my name is Jonathan Bricker, and I'm the chair of the Arkansas District Export Council. In my primary role, I work for Regions Bank, located in Bentonville, Arkansas. My banking career started off as international business development, and now I'm a commercial lender, focusing on commercial and industrial businesses located in Arkansas. I'd like to begin today by thanking our sponsors, the AEDC, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, and AMS, Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions. Without their year-round support, we would not be able to host these webinars free of charge like we do. So their sponsorship for us is greatly appreciated. For those of you joining us today that aren't quite sure who the deck is or what we do, please allow me to do a quick introduction. We're a private, nonprofit organization that brings together experienced international business people with potential exporters. Each deck member has been appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce for their real-world expertise in international trade. We have a ton of experience within our council and across many different sectors. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean we know the answers to every single question, but what we can do is introduce you to someone who does. We are a community of connections within the exporting world, and we want to be your strategic partner to help you grow your exports, which helps grow your bottom line. My hope for the day is that you walk away from this webinar with more confidence in your exporting abilities. If you have any questions throughout the webinar and you don't feel comfortable asking it here, I invite you to reach out to us on our website at exportarkansas.org, and we'll have one of our members reach out to you. There, you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter, which is chock full of pertinent international news and trade show opportunities. I'd also like to take a quick moment to bring to your attention and invite you to potentially be a sponsor for our annual Governor's Award for Excellence in Global Trade. The ceremony is on Friday, October 17th, and it's a luncheon that begins with a networking reception for the Arkansas business community. It's located at Robinson Hall in downtown Little Rock. The awards themselves, they recognize the export success among Arkansas's manufacturing and agricultural companies that are actively trading in international markets. There's typically a room full of business people, economic developers, state secretaries, and even some international business college students. So if that might be something you're interested in, please reach out, and we're happy to tell you more about it. I'd like to ask everyone to keep themselves muted and raise your hand if you don't have a question, or simply put it in the chat that we'll be monitoring. That way we don't have any background noise interrupting our speakers. So I appreciate everyone's help with that. With that, I'd like to introduce everyone to your moderator today, Mr. Rudy Ortiz. Rudy is the owner of Strategic Business Services, LLC, where he helps companies in a wide variety of international business and exporting needs. Rudy works alongside companies entering new markets and is a U.S. partner of Global Market Entry Consultants, which is a global group of entry experts that are located in 32 different countries. With an MBA in international business, he is a certified global business professional, and for this reason, he is the DEX Education Chair. Rudy, thanks so much for spearheading this, and with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Jonathan, thank you so much for the kind words. Obviously things are interesting, probably more interesting than most people care for. And so this is going to be a really great webinar. We have a person that is in Mexico City, looking at the things that are occurring on a daily basis, and I think she's going to have a lot of great information for us. And of course, Mexico itself is a great market for the U.S. If for no other reason, the proximity and the fact that they have a very large population with a large middle class. And so, they're, I think, our number one or two trading partner, I believe. In any case, we buy a lot from each other, and in addition to that, because of something that's called the maquiladoras, which is a system where if you're, let's say, for instance, in Texas and you're making widgets, you can send them over to Mexico to modify them somehow. Then they're sent back to into the United States and vice versa, and so it keeps the costs lower. And also Mexico is, especially in the automotive area, they're really good at what they do there. And so it's a very symbiotic relationship between Mexico and the United States. See, it looks like Ms. Heidi, are we done with the poll? Okay, all righty.
And there's the results. Can you see it?
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the poll that asked, have you ever exported to the U.S., 38% of people have, and 63 have not. In terms of have you worked with the U.S. Commercial Service, 50% have and 50% haven't. So that's great information, and we'll make sure we note that. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Okay, very good. All right, so our guest speaker is going to be Miss Lauren Coughlin, and she's with the U.S. Commercial Service. She's obviously a commercial service officer, and she joined the Foreign Service back in 2022 as an officer, as a commercial service officer and standards attaché. She covers issues that are related to technical barriers. Very pertinent today to trade in Mexico and Central America and the Caribbean. She also covers energy, mining, environmental services, financial services, chemicals, HVAC, and textile industries in Mexico. So she's a wealth of information in terms of things that we do and have done for us in Mexico. She recently completed her FCS domestic tour in Philadelphia. I bet you that was interesting. And before joining the Foreign Commercial Service, she was a policy advisor with the American Petroleum Institute, and I bet you that was super interesting as well, covering refining fuels and climate change. So she's a native of Maryland, attended Troy University in Alabama, and she also holds a master's of public policy from George Washington University. Very impressive. And so, Miss Lauren, if you will go ahead and take it away, would really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rudy. Thank you, Heidi, for all of the support. Jonathan, of course, for the introduction, and to our USIAC colleagues, Richard, stateside, that really help pull things like this together. If you'll give me one moment, I'm going to pull up my presentation, which should be smooth because I practiced it 3 times. There we go. Y'all can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. Thank you so much. So yeah, thank you for the bio. This is actually my second time speaking to this deck. I really appreciate that you have me back. So I will try and focus on things that have changed since the last time we spoke, which is a lot, as Rudy mentioned. So as Rudy mentioned, I kind of wear 2 hats here in Mexico. So I'm the standards attaché, where I focus on technical barriers to trade in Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. So a technical barrier to trade for you, in your line of work, it might be a label, it might be a certification, it might be a standard you have to comply with. Maybe Mexico requires a standard that we don't use in the United States. That's something where maybe we can advocate for Mexico to open that up to consider US standards, or maybe it's just complicated. You need help complying with the rules here in Mexico. And so I do that for the whole region, but really Mexico keeps me really busy. Central America and the Caribbean, they tend to be much more aligned with North American standards, whereas sometimes Mexico does go and do its own thing. In terms of regulation standards, Mexico will often kind of reinvent the wheel. And my limited semi-professional opinion, they'll sit down and write a standard from scratch with a bunch of engineers in the room. When in the United States, we have NGOs like I worked for, the American Petroleum Institute. We have institutions full of professionals that are in the field every day that write our standards, and then the laws, the standard is incorporated by reference. So those are the kinds of things I do with my standards hat. And then Rudy listed a handful of sectors. In Mexico, we divide officers by the sectors that we support. And so that list just happens to be the sectors I support, but in standards, I do it all. They're really interesting sectors in Mexico because I cover energy, environment, a few new ones, HVAC mining, that's new since last year, and financial services is incredibly interesting in Mexico. Let me move forward. Oh, that I didn't practice. Here we go. So I don't want to talk at you too much about what the commercial service does, because I think that you hear from us plenty, and it sounds like half of you have worked with us. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming back to listen to us, even after that. So we have a suite of services that are some free, some paid. The paid services, we act kind of like a really accessible consultancy in country. A handful of the free services, they fall into the category of commercial diplomacy. Like if the US government needs to speak to a foreign government on behalf of US business in general, that's commercial diplomacy, or advocacy. Advocacy happens whenever you are trying to sell to a foreign government and you're facing foreign competition. Not all foreign governments have something like the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. And so you sometimes find that the playing field isn't fair when you're trying to sell to a foreign government. And that's when we can come in and help you with that. So that's something that I know Richard would be delighted to talk through if you're interested in pursuing any of our services. But I know the focus of the conversation today is talk about what's new and what's specific to Mexico. So I won't spend any more time on this. Something that's new related to the last slide is we have a new president and we have about 30,000 new executive orders. A few of them do really directly relate to our work here, but I showed you that first slide to say that our services themselves have not changed. We may see a limiting of some of our services because, as you know, the size of the federal government is shrinking through different methods to limit our workforce a little bit. So we might have a pullback of services, but that hasn't happened yet. We are operating as usual. If you came to us last year for a specific kind of service, be it a gold key or a research project of some sort, market intelligence, you can continue to do that. What you might find changes in your interaction with us is we might ask a few more questions about the nature of the help that we're giving, and does it contribute to national and economic security? Now, this executive order does not say that we need to limit our work to matters of national and economic security, but we do want to have a greater focus on it. So I definitely want to know if your product in some way contributes to national and economic security. That I'm sure that at some point I will have a reporting requirement. We don't have it yet. So I just need to focus on these areas and make sure that I'm really helping companies that fall into these buckets. So how do you find out if you fall into a bucket? If you are exporting some sort of strategic technology, that's something that would be considered of national or economic security. Specifically, if it's in critical infrastructure, you see these handful of categories. That covers a lot. That's a lot of what I do. That's really, you'll see later, those are really the top exports to Mexico. So a lot of what we do here in Mexico is going to meet this standard of national and economic security. And then, of course, in general, material U.S. economic benefit, that's where you're going to see my commercial diplomacy work, where we talk to a foreign government about opening up a market to U.S. products, removing those technical barriers to trade, like I talked about, advocacy, where a U.S. company wins a foreign government tender instead of a foreign competitor. Those all contribute to the U.S. economic benefit. And of course, investment that involves bringing jobs in general back to the United States. Of course, we've heard rhetoric focusing on manufacturing. This my executive order that is my marching orders does not specifically limit it to manufacturing, you'll see. But any kind of onshoring of jobs. So I'll tell you what I don't know yet. In Mexico, the issue of nearshoring has been really, really important for the last few years. And it's something that the Mexican government has really jumped on and trying to sell Mexico as an opportunity to grow their inward investment as a nearshoring market. I don't really know where we're going with that. So again, we're still business as usual. We don't have any kind of directive to stop doing nearshoring, to encourage nearshoring. I'll tell you, in my day-to-day work, sometimes incidentally, we kind of help with nearshoring because we have all these directives to promote US supply chains. Think of in the COVID pandemic, whenever we had to really shore up our supply chains for medical devices, a lot of those coming out of Mexico. Maybe that looks like nearshoring, but really for us, it's always been a supply chain issue. So if you have a question, you don't know if you qualify for our services, you don't know if you can reach out, just reach out. Us in the foreign field at Post and embassies and consulates around the world would be happy to answer that question. That's something that your stateside USIAC would be happy to talk you through. For the most part, we're happy to help US businesses. I think we say yes way more than we say no. The only times we really say no to companies looking for our help is if it's a US based company that purely sells foreign goods. You know, you import widgets from a foreign market and then you re-export them somewhere else. That's something that doesn't really meet our sniff test. But we're always happy to talk through that and see if we want to help. We want to help US businesses. So we do what we can.
And
So
Ms.
that's the only
Lauren,
thing that's changed.
I just wanted to also tell people that Richard Duda is the Arkansas commercial service guy, and we will have his information a little bit later after the webinar. But there's Richard there, and so you can always reach out to him, and he will put you in contact with whatever office is appropriate.
Yeah, you'll find whenever you work with us, it's really hand in hand, stateside and us. We like to keep our USIAC contacts in the loop. They keep things organized, and a lot of times you want to export to multiple markets. So typically, if you have a problem with a transaction specifically related to Mexico, go ahead, come straight to us. We can tell Richard once we get through it. But if it's any kind of overall, I want to grow my exports, I have an existential problem with exporting, that's something that Richard would help you come up with a really holistic solution for. And then loop us in as we are needed. So yeah, either way, we pass clients back and forth. So just don't be a stranger in general. All right, so specifically Mexico. As Rudy mentioned, of course, obviously proximity, we have 25 land ports of entry along the border. And as you've probably seen in the news, on the Mexican side of the border, we are seeing a lot more investment into these ports of entry, which is good news for US businesses. We're seeing greater enforcement and better port of entry infrastructure. This isn't a sector that I specifically cover, so I don't want to focus too much on it, but it's an obvious benefit for Mexico. And I think that those of you that have exported, comparing Mexico versus other markets, I mean, you know this firsthand. That's the kind of thing that Rudy could talk you through super well. And a quick note, specifically in Mexico, we have a really strong list of local business service providers, and you can find that by honestly, just Google it. It would be trade.gov business service provider Mexico. And so that's a list of companies that are present here that help facilitate US exports. So those will be law firms, logistics companies, consultancies, folks that'll help you with permitting, things like that. Not every market has the manpower to maintain lists this good. I can tell you for a fact, the Mexico list is very good. Every company on there is someone that we know personally, that we know US businesses have worked with. We meet with them a few times a year. We have local events here at the embassy where we invite all those guys in. We make sure that they're up to date with with US regulations, aware of economic trends, things like that. So it's a really good resource that is, not to brag, Mexico versus other markets, but our list is really, really good. I hope that if you're considering Mexico, you at least check that out when you're looking for providers of various services. All right. My face is over my notes, so I'm going to move myself. There we go. So, of course, Mexico, enormous economy. It's growing as you may have heard if you follow Mexican news, presidential rhetoric in the last campaign, a real desire to grow the middle class, to bring people out of poverty, and that's a sales opportunity. That's an export opportunity. We do see in Mexico really steady GDP growth, increasing consumer spending relative to GDP growth. That's something that I see. A lot of US products are readily available here in the Mexican market. And that's true in, government spending and individual consumer spending. I think there's a really big appetite for goods from the United States here in Mexico. And those acronyms are business to business. That is B2C. Should be B2G, no? All right. I don't know what B2C is. This is what happens when you steal someone else's slides.
Is that business to consumer?
Consumer, direct to consumer, I guess. All right, let me move myself. Well, I would still say B2G. Since I focus so much on commercial diplomacy, that's where my mind goes. And when I update these slides, I will add that as a really big opportunity, a really big advocacy opportunity for US exporters.
For sure.
All right, so obvious challenges. So of course, USMCA is a great benefit. I'm going to get to tariffs in a little bit. It eliminates most tariffs. You have a simplified import regime. Simplified rules of origin is how it's listed, but that means that on the Mexican side, you can export under a certain threshold, all under one simplified tariff code, and then it's all USMCA qualified goods. So if you have a shipment of various things under a certain dollar amount, you can qualify for this benefit. And that's something that we can walk you through for your specific case, or put you in touch with a customs broker that can help you navigate that. So there are strong IP protections in Mexico. However, we've recently listed Mexico as a market of concern in terms of IP. And so that's because we see a growing counterfeit market here in Mexico. I'll note that we do have an IP attaché here in Mexico. We don't have that in every single market. And so our IP attaché can kind of help you navigate the specific risk for your product here in Mexico. We see strong protections on paper. We have great allies with IP lawyers here in Mexico that can help you navigate this. But yeah, it's a growing risk, particularly in consumer goods. And you can find that based on USTR's designation of IP risks. If anyone has any specific questions about that, maybe we have a separate conversation. Dispute settlement mechanisms. Under USMCA, there are provisions to settle intergovernmental disputes, and that's something that we've pursued successfully under USMCA. Of course, in the news, we hear a lot of how USMCA isn't working, but we've used it to solve problems in ways we haven't been able in the past. And both the US has been found at fault, Canada's been found at fault on some agricultural goods. We were found at fault in terms of how we were interpreting automotive rules of origin, and Mexico's been found at fault in several environmental cases. And so USMCA is working in this area. If you bring something to us uniquely in Mexico, we have this mechanism to raise it at a high level. For countries that are only members of the WTO that don't have a separate free trade agreement, you just don't have as many bites at the apple to resolve problems. So honestly, that's a lot more work for my colleagues at Post, whereas here we have the teeth of USMCA to solve problems. I'll say that I do that an awful lot as a standards attaché. If a company brings to me their observed part related to a technical barrier to trade, there's a really high probability we can talk about that in a USMCA committee within the next 6 months. And yeah, that's just something we don't have everywhere. Let me move myself. Oh, another note, another challenge that I think isn't protected by USMCA. As you know, maybe if you follow Mexico, on June 1st, we had elections for judges for the first time in Mexico. And so in the United States, in several municipality cities, we do have some judges elected, but in Mexico, this was across the board, all the way up to the Supreme Court, a desire for judges to become elected. Many companies have raised this to the US Embassy, to the US government, as a real threat to the opportunity to do business in Mexico, because you lose the opportunity of the Mexican court system to resolve disputes. So I just wanted to note that that's an area of dispute resolution that is outside of USMCA that is not going how we want. I guess if there are questions about that, we can get back to it. I don't want to nag on elections too much. All right, this took me a minute to find all of the latest tariff data. This is a note on Mexican imports into the United States. Rudy asked if I could just give the news of the day, where we stand right now, because if you do this work, you know that there was an exemption for USMCA qualified goods. That's still in place, but we've had changes to steel and aluminum quite recently. That is still in place, 50% on all steel and aluminum. And then energy products, that hasn't changed. And then the blanket 25% on everything that isn't USMCA. Agricultural and autos have changed quite a bit. There's a lot of nuances to that 25% in autos. I think if you have specific questions there, I'd be happy to have a separate conversation. And agricultural products, if you have questions about ag tariffs, I would pass you to our Foreign Agricultural Service colleagues, because that's just something that we don't really do. Mexico has fared better than most, but that's still a lot to navigate. And it is confusing. Oh, and all that information, just by the way, is based on USTR publicly available information based on recent presidential tariff actions. So if you need to know the specific tariff for your good, please don't ask me. I have no idea. Go to this website, HTS, and then you put in your product's HTS code, and it'll pull up the tariff rate.
Laura, question for you on that last slide. Do they update that information fairly regularly?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, this is the best way to find your tariff rate.
Thank you.
All right. This is no surprise, the same story I told last year, and actually I don't have updated data. Just it's a top destination for US goods. We are now the #1. Mexico is the #1 trade partner to the United States. There are ways you can slice and dice that data and say that it's still Canada, but if it's total trade back and forth to include services, it's Mexico. So that happened since I got here. So might put that on my annual review. All right, no surprise, big flow of goods, but also services, and services are growing. And honestly, I don't find this slide very interesting. Let's move. There we go. This is the one I like. The overly complicated slide. So this is the total imports in Mexico from the United States. And so you can see where your products fit in. I'm sorry that is probably difficult to read. If anybody wants like the nitty-gritty version of this, I can probably send it separately. I love it. I think no surprise there. Energy, obviously. Corn products, obviously. The purple, those are high-tech devices. So you'll see medical devices, LED lights, screens, mobile devices, things like that. Up on the left, you'll have high-tech like telecom equipment, big importer of telecom. I guess at the end of this, I'll get to some changes in legislation that affect these sectors.
And Miss Lauren, just to make sure that everyone got this, these are products that Mexico is is buying from the U.S.
Exactly. And we actually have this data broken out by state, and I'm sorry, I did not do it for you. I meant to, that there's a way to find that information on trade.gov, exports by state to Mexico, and you can break it out.
130 billion, that's a big number.
All right, so I think as I mentioned at the beginning, whenever I didn't know what B2C was, there is a huge there's a huge desire for US goods at every level, including B2C, whatever that is. And I think that that's largely cultural. It's largely the shared border. We do business together very, very well. I was chatting with Rudy and Heidi before the session started about what it's like living in Mexico, and it's very similar. You know, even if you aren't 100% fluent in Spanish, Mexicans are very patient and they're happy to hold a meeting in Spanglish. They'll let you spit it out, even in your bad gringo Spanish. They're very kind to me. I've experienced that firsthand. Our humor is the same. Our negotiation strategy is not quite the same, but we can coach you on the nuances. Just for respect for the deal, I think very similar. I think a lot of companies come down to Mexico and have a gold key service with us, and they're expecting difficult, tense meetings, and maybe it's like that to get the meeting, which is why they came to us in the first place. You know, they couldn't get someone to pick up the phone, but once you get the meeting, we have a lot of really happy clients who have, you know, their 5 incredibly successful meetings as part of their Gold Key service, follow-ups with everybody. Yeah, just amicable, pleasant meetings that are also relatively efficient. We don't cut to the chase in Mexico quite as quickly as we do in the United States, and so sometimes I mess that up myself. I start talking shop too soon, and I haven't asked about someone's kids. We'll help you with that. We'll have our locals help you with that since I'm not very good at it. But yeah, just companies are happy coming down here and doing this kind of business, and it goes both ways. A lot of Mexicans have cultural ties to the United States. I was hearing all about Rudy's family history, which is very interesting. A lot of the Mexicans that I know here, they studied in the US, or at least they've traveled there. They take their family to Disneyland World. I don't know which one's which. I guess my parents didn't love me. I never went to them. But Mexicans do. They come to Disney. They know it super well. They come once a year. They come to shop. They have friends in the United States that they visit. I think that cultural affinity can't be overstated. Oops. All right. Sorry, y'all are in second place. No surprise. Texas is beating you. It's that energy export. All right, so there are a handful of economic clusters here in Mexico. So this is a good time for me to note that we in the Foreign Commercial Service are present in 3 cities in Mexico. We're present here in Mexico City, which is dead center in the country where all of the images seem to have focused. That's considered the central Mexican market. So we have our largest team here in the capital, which isn't true in every market. There are many countries where we have more people in the commercial capital of the country. Think like Sao Paulo, Brazil, Almaty in Kazakhstan, where we have more commercial officers in the commercial capital. Here in Mexico, commercial capital is the capital, so we have the most folks here, but we're also present in Guadalajara and Monterrey. So in Guadalajara, that's really considered kind of the Silicon Valley of Mexico. We have a lot of high-tech development in Guadalajara. It's also relatively close to the beach, a lot of cultural history there. If you needed to visit for work, you could also do a day trip to the town of Tequila. It's a cool town, has a lot of culture, a lot of history. It's pretty cute. Monterrey is really the industrial hub. So now that I've taken on mining, I have an even greater appreciation for that region. Also all kinds of advanced manufacturing that focuses in Monterrey. So we have Expo Manufactura, which is our biggest manufacturing show in Mexico, and that does not happen in Mexico City. That happens in Monterrey. In Mexico City, we'll get specialty shows and things in my sector that are relevant to the federal government, like energy, aviation, those kinds of shows. Those are all in Mexico City. But yeah, anything industry related, definitely if you're coming to the country, you should make a stop in Monterrey. And since we have a team there, we can give gold key services, one-off meetings, things like that. We can host all of that in both of those markets. I will note that we're downsizing Guadalajara, unfortunately, because they just got a new consulate. So we will, in 1 year, lose our officer there, but we'll keep a team of local staff in Guadalajara. All right, I feel like this is really similar to the last slide, just different ways to slice and dice, like the best export opportunities. I think maybe we can just make this a conversation at some point. Does your product have a market here? Because sometimes, the data doesn't tell you everything. All right. So, of course, I live here. I am very safe here. I also follow very carefully State Department security guidelines, and you can find that just by searching Travel Advisory Mexico and click on the State Department website. Make sure you end up at something that's .gov. There are several places in Mexico that we just recommend that Americans don't go. In Mexico, crime is very localized, regionalized. And so, because it's cartel specific, so it'll be specific states we advise you not to go on, or specific highways we advise you not to go on. If you are a company that has investments in Mexico and you need to keep apprised of the security situation, we recommend that you join the group called OSAC, OSAC. And that is led by our regional security office. And that'll give you our intelligence on the security situation in Mexico. Of course, in commerce, this isn't our area of expertise. If you're a private citizen, or you're coming here for business, you're coming for a conference, absolutely, we want you to enroll in the SAFE program. That's SAFE, like SAFE. That's also through the State Department. That's a way that the US government knows that you're here, and you're going to get, you can sign up for text, email, WhatsApp notifications about different security considerations wherever you're going to be. So in Mexico City, of course, I'm signed up for this. So I'll get things like, maybe if I'm not fluent in Spanish and I'm not checking the local news, I wouldn't know there are protests at a bunch of shopping centers in the last few weeks. They tell you if certain roads are closed. So definitely sign up for SAFE. It doesn't take very long. Just your contact information, how long you'll be here. It's incredibly helpful for us. If something happens, an earthquake, crime situation, we need to find you, and then for you to get that information directly into your hands.
Lauren, I tell my friends the same thing about Baltimore. Baltimore is not safe either. I'll tell you what, there's neighborhoods in Baltimore I would definitely not thread in.
Man, that was a little targeted at the Marylander. Yeah, I'd say so. Mexico is more localized, right? Because there are places in the US, or just like in the city, you could get your car broken into. You leave something intriguing on your passenger seat, you might have a problem. Whereas in Mexico City, I think it is very neighborhood focused. So really, really, really just want you to go to that website and know exactly where you are. Or talk to us. We'll let us go with you to your meetings, and then we'll make sure that you're driven, to the right places. Man, coming at Baltimore out of left field. All right, so Mexico has a new president. She is of the same political party as her successor, who went by AMLO, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, AMLO. The new president is Claudia Sheinbaum. So you have the same political party, and I can tell you, leading up to her election, or to her assumption of power, the US Embassy was cautiously optimistic because we had really productive meetings with her team. She's a scientist. She's an environmental scientist, knows the energy industry pretty well. seems to listen, you know, would take meetings. She, like AMLO, came from Mexico City government. But we were really worried about this continuation of the AMLO agenda. And I think in some ways we were right, and in some ways we weren't. So what I mentioned earlier, this judicial reform, voting for judges, that's something that I think a lot of people really hoped would go away. It was AMLO's idea. We hoped his successor would disappear it. But she didn't. She kept to that idea to really weaken the judiciary in Mexico. But there are some things that she's softening on. So the AMLO, the previous president, had a lot of big infrastructure projects that were really his hallmark, but they were horribly indebted. So there's a train through the Yucatan, which actually is up and running now. It was completed under the Sheinbaum administration, but fraught with problems under AMLO. There's also a new airport that AMLO was just dumping money into, forcing like us diplomatic flights into his new pet project airport. You're not seeing that like ideological decision out of Claudia. Also related to the new refinery, if anyone's in oil and gas, the Dos Bocas refinery, it's still bleeding money, but slightly less than we thought it could be. So she's definitely an independent leader. She's not just a clone of AMLO. And I think that's something that US companies have breathed a sigh of relief about. It means that she's coming at things very fresh and doesn't know a lot. But she meets with industry. She's continued the morning press conference. I mean, AMLO did this long, like sometimes 3-hour press conference every single day, kind of Chavez style. Claudia continues that, but it's much shorter. So it's kind of her take on the Mañanera. Yeah, I think if you have specific policy related concerns, happy to chat. Let me see what the next. I'll stay on this, just to let you know a bit of the news of the day as related to Claudia's legacy. So AMLO had a handful of reforms across various sectors to include energy, telecommunications, manufacturing, and it was a way to really prop up Mexican manufacturing and promote Mexican ownership of public goods. I'm not paid to give my political beliefs, but he claimed to be a socialist. He was really a populist. And Claudia is more a classic socialist here. And so he would kind of throw money at things, whereas she's a little more programmatic with these reforms. So a lot of the implementing laws for those reforms are hitting in the next 2 weeks. And so if you are an energy company, a telecom company, you already know this, and it is already keeping you up at night. But there's going to be a special sessions of Congress in the next 2 weeks to kind of ram some of these laws through. And these aren't laws written by senators. They are laws written by the executive and sent to Congress for them to rubber stamp. And so a lot of those cancel certain agencies within Mexico and things that the United States always supported, such as NI, which protected cross-border data privacy. That's being disappeared. Their federal telecommunications bureau is being disappeared and converted into something else. And their anti-competition agency is being disappeared and put under something else. And so if you have specific trade disputes, specific problems in Mexico, in the next couple months, the way that you fight those battles, it's going to change. And so that's something we're very happy to talk to you about. If you have a problem right now, please let me know. We're tracking a lot of issues like this. Another change relevant to Rudy's introduction is changes to the IMEX program, which is how those companies that are maquiladoras, that's how they operate. It's kind of like a free trade zone so that you can value add to a product here in Mexico and then re-export it without paying local value added tax, which is 16% in Mexico, so pretty significant. There are a lot of limitations to that. We're seeing a shrinking of the scope of that once really, really beneficial program for investment in Mexico. And so if you're a company that has manufacturing in Mexico, you're an IMEX, If you're a member of Index, which is the trade association for those maquiladoras, just let us know. Let us know what your problems of the day are, because we're tracking a lot of changes. Along that vein, there are investigations into IMEX fraud. I won't go into too much detail there, but there's some collateral damage for US companies that maybe used to do business with the folks who are being investigated. Definitely want to hear from you if you're one of these companies. So just an offline conversation, but please keep us in the loop, because the Mexican government does not tell us all of these issues. We have to hear it from the US company. All right, this is probably the same slide as last year. There's still big demand issues for both water and power in Mexico. We do think that the Sheinbaum administration is focusing more on this, but it's also suffering a lot of the same ills as the prior administration, such as a lack of investment in transmission and distribution. So, okay, the Sheinbaum administration sees we have a power issue, so we're going to invest in generation. But we're working to get them over the finish line in these areas. And I'll note that in Mexico, we have an energy attaché. Typically around the world, we only have energy attachés in like former SSRs, you know, areas where we had nuclear considerations. Mexico is such a priority market in terms of technical information sharing with Department of Energy and commercial issues like what I covered, that we have an energy attaché, and that is a huge help. And we might not have it forever. So if you're an energy company seeking resolution to a problem, or you want to expand into Mexico, now's really the time, while we have this like extra tool in our toolkit, which is an energy attaché with multiple PhDs and grant money that she can spend in Mexico. So something to keep in mind. Oh, and I'll just note maybe a few trade shows that are relevant, because these are both in my sector. Coming up next week, we have Expo Electrica, which is some power generation, but also just like electrical doohickeys. And there's an HVAC wing. So that's all stuff that I cover. And I have a lot of my technical barrier to trade issues covered at that show. In September, we have two shows, Green Expo and Aquatech. Aquatech is the biggest show in Mexico for water technologies, and I cover water, love Aquatech. It's a great opportunity. Actually, the USA Pavilion in Aquatech is sold out. So if you want to come, we just stick you over in Green Expo and then keep you included in the water programming. It's a really, really good show.
Miss Lauren, if you could send Heidi whatever information you have, we'll distribute it to all the attendees.
I will find where I have that listed. All right. This is just to reiterate the risks of USMCA, but I think I gapped about that earlier. All right. So we're getting towards the end of my presentation. I just wanted to note something else that's new since last year. Under the Sheinbaum administration, they've announced a really big spending plan to grow manufacturing in Mexico. Really, if you were to look at it closely, and you follow South American politics, this looks like an import substitution plan, which always works. So that's going to include some of the problematic things that I already mentioned, kind of a pushing out of foreign competition by means of shrinking the economic benefits of the IMEX program. But it's also going to just be, you know, a typical spending plan, throwing money at priority sectors. So Plan Mexico is bad for US companies, and that we might see more barriers to trade in certain target Mexican industries, so textiles, plastics, things like that. We might see US companies facing higher barriers. Tell me about it if you see it. But new projects, new money thrown around in energy, infrastructure, manufacturing, and of course, just hiring people. This is something in my energy events. We talk about Plan Mexico all the time. I was just at something today where the Secretary of Energy came to say, invest in Mexico, invest, invest, invest. We're building all these things, which does seem to be true. They're putting their money where their mouth is. All right, specifically in energy, I don't expect I'll have a ton of energy companies here, but you can just see an expansion. But we wish that there was more transmission and distribution here instead of just generation. But if you sell turbines, Good day. All right, along the same line, I think we're seeing a more healthy growth in terms of industrial and transportation infrastructure, new rail projects, new highways, things like that. A lot of toll roads in Mexico, if you're the kind of company that builds toll roads, that kind of infrastructure, also emissions equipment, that kind of thing, big opportunity for you. I'll tell you, I have quite a few technical barriers to trade in this sector. In terms of rail, we see some European rail standards taking hold here in Mexico. Why? I don't know a lot of trains that come from Germany to Mexico, but I'm working on it, fighting those standards. And then in automotive, we see new safety regulations in terms of heavy duty vehicles that follow light duty standards update from 2-3 years ago. A lot of new regulations that target EVs, charging, just in general, electromobility infrastructure. If that's something that's affecting you, or you see an opportunity to sell widgets related to that, we'd love to hear from you. All right, move myself. So of course, Mexico, another benefit here is the strong labor, a highly educated and young labor market. And so of course, you'll find a lot of US universities that want to target those high-tech sectors, semiconductors, aerospace. And so we have a lot of new and growing exchange programs between Mexico and the United States, between Mexican universities and high schools and US universities. I'll note not as high English uptake in Mexico, not as high English proficiency as you might expect. So that's also a recurring export opportunity, is just selling English ESL programs to foreign students. Pharma and semiconductors. Semiconductors, if you do this, you're already in the loop. We have the Semiconductor Forum coming up in July in Arizona. A lot of strategic partnerships with Arizona State University. A lot of spending. Really, the short answer for Mexico is probably not a whole lot of opportunity for development, but maybe packaging is an opportunity for Mexico to get involved in semiconductors. In terms of pharma, huge market, huge opportunity in Mexico. If you do this, would love to introduce you to my colleagues who cover this. Pharma, and I should update this to also include medical devices. I think that is a constant growing opportunity in Mexico, but also pharma is one of those areas where we see a lot of IP violations. You see a lot of counterfeit drugs in Mexico.
Ms. Lauren, and just wanted to give some clarity. When you talk about packaging, especially in terms of semiconductors, we're not talking about boxes. So, we're talking about the installation of semiconductors onto the board. That is the term that's used. Packaging is the term that's used for the actual, installation of IC chips and such onto the let's say the motherboard or the circuit board.
Exactly. So a high-tech job, but not Taiwan, which has decades of experience doing semiconductors. All right. So I wanted to maybe just take a moment to mention one other news of the day that didn't fit in my slides at all. So in this package of new laws that are being considered in the next 2 weeks, it's going to include some real weakenings of the regulatory review process. And that's something, standards attaché, very near and dear to my heart. So just a final plug, I've had a few things that are like, contact us if you've experienced. If you are a company with investments in Mexico and you typically like an opportunity to participate in the rulemaking process in Mexico, you submit comments, you have to follow regulations, you want them to be promulgated within a reasonable amount of time, not overnight for immediate compliance tomorrow. That's the kind of thing, pardon me, I'd love to hear from you if you have any concerns in this area. There's a new law, it's called the Elimination of Bureaucratic Procedures, that's very wonky and the kind of thing that I love, but not really widely applicable to everybody, but it's gonna limit it's going to take the responsibility of the notice and comment process out of the Ministry of the Economy and put it into the newly stood up Digital Transformation Agency. There's a lot of good, I think, in the rule. It's going to digitize, as the name suggests, it's going to digitize a lot of processes, these bureaucratic procedures that like really have a huge administrative cost here in Mexico. In Mexico, there's a lot of like, I have to submit a permit, so I have to go wait in line with my physical signed by a notary permit with my lawyer present with me. There's a lot of that. So we might see a reduction of some of those administrative costs in the next few years. But with it seems to be a real weakening of, in our view, and per USMCA and the WTO, really necessary regulatory bureaucratic procedures. So
Yeah, Miss
final plug.
Lauren, as we'll need to get to our right now. I only see one question, and
Yep.
the question is: does the 25% import tariff apply to all car makes manufactured in Mexico, including the likes of BYD now being manufactured south of the border?
So, but we don't import, it's those, let me go back. Oh no, I can't go back. So those were import tariffs from Mexico into the United States. And so
So I think what they're asking is, so there's cars being manufactured in Mexico, being exported to the U.S. Does the 25% tariff pertain to those cars coming out of Mexico?
But it's a unique question because he's asking about BYD, which is a Chinese like EV
Manufactured car.
manufacturing. Yeah. Great question,
Exactly.
Alberto.
do y'all have BYD in Arkansas?
No.
Yeah,
He's saying
we
like
don't
if there's going to
import.
be a 25%, does that 25% tariff on all like car manufacturers, does
In
that
Mexico.
include the Chinese based BYD manufacturing that's now being made in Mexico?
No, so it would be, so if it's a Chinese vehicle, it's based on percent value add, right? So if it's a Mexican, I don't know, if Mexico comes up with their own car brand, then it would be USMCA compliant, it would be its own thing. But it's all based on the percentage content of that car. So we have much higher tariffs on China. So maybe the 25%, I don't know, the hubcaps, whatever, that we put on the car in Mexico, maybe that would only be taxed at 25%, but we have super high tariffs on China. So it remains uneconomical to import BYD into the United States.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Hey, great question, Alberto.
Miss Heidi, do you see any other questions? Because at this point, I do not.
No, I don't see any other questions.
Well, we've got a minute or two that we can take if somebody wants to on mic and ask a question, and I think that's all we have time for at this point. All right. Well, you did such a great
Answered
job, Miss
all
Lauren, that
questions.
there's no questions. How good is that?
I hope folks take me up and let me know if they're facing any challenges in Mexico.
Very good.
lot
Miss
of
Heidi,
time.
if you would put up our last slide pertaining to contact information and all of that, would appreciate it. And as I
Yeah,
think
and
we
while she
as I
Yeah,
think we
and
told
while
you
she's doing that,
earlier,
I just want to take one more moment to thank the AEDC and AMS for their sponsorship of our programs. It allows us to bring in wonderful speakers, and we are forever grateful. So thank you to the AEDC and AMS, Lauren. Great as always. Love having you here, and I appreciate all you do for the U.S. and Mexico.
and also just want to remind you that Ms. Heidi is recording this session, and that she'll probably have that up on YouTube in the next day or so.
Yes. Richard, would you like to talk about this webinar in July? Is he still here?
He may not be on.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. We'll market that
Oh,
very
there he is.
hard
There he
and
is.
heavy coming up. So, all right.
Sure.
Well, thank you for your time, everyone, today. And I hope you have a successful rest of your week.
And there's the contact information for everyone. Thank you so much again, Lauren.
Thank you.
Feel free to contact us if you have any
Bye.
questions.
All right. I'll head out.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
All right. You'll have a great day.
Thanks, you too.